Hey guys, and welcome back to Common Courtesy. I'm your host and moderator, Sean Nicholas, aka Desire Some More. And here with me are my lovely co-hosts. We have Nikki to my, I believe, right. Hi, Nikki. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Welcome back. I love to see you. Yay.
Good to see you. Good to be
Mm,
back.
yes, and right behind under her, we have our other lovely co-host, Courtney Harbaugh. Hello.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good, baby. How you doing?
Hanging in there.
Yeah, I know. And joining us as our special guest co-host is City Council member, City Councilman Robert Blackmon. Hello, how are you?
Happy to finally be on your show. We've been talking about it for a long time. I'm happy to be
I
here.
know. I'm excited. I'm excited. So I hope we're ready to get in some hot topics tonight. But first, if our audience members don't fully know you, Councilman, we're gonna ask you a couple of questions in order to get to know you. Is there anything you would like to tell the audience about who you are? And you know,
On my first year on the council, so I am 6 months into a 4-year term. Um, did not realize until inauguration day I'm the youngest councilman in 117-year history of the city. Huge honor for me. Um, really love working with everybody. It's been a interesting first 6 months, as I'm sure you guys are aware with coronavirus. We're going through a racial awakening right now, stock market going up and down, economy having issues. There's so much happening right now, and it's been an interesting time. It's been a stressful time, but it's also been a productive time because I've been able to help out. And born and raised in St. Pete, so happy to be helping out my community in the time of need.
cool, cool. Can I ask you, how are you feeling now? Like, I don't know if you've been noticing what's been going on. I know you have been, but my question for you, do you feel that the government is really hearing the people? The protests, are they taking action, or are is there still like this deafness, this tone deafness?
Well, it depends on what government you're talking about. So, like local government, honestly, I was always attracted to local government because it's the closest to the people. It's people's first line of contact. And frankly, in St. Petersburg, we have one of the most diverse, wonderful uh, legislating bodies you could have. So we have, for the first time, I said I was the youngest in history. We have two black females for the first time in history on the council. We have two LGBT members currently. One just was termed out of office after 10 years. So we have an extremely diverse council. So I think that almost everything that people address in St. Pete, one of the council members will hear you and will bring it up. And that's what's so cool is if you ever watch any of our meetings, they are just, it's a bunch of, it's a bunch of just people who all care and they have unique different perspectives. That's why I love all of our meetings is because everybody has a different uh, agenda or something they're passionate about or an expertise, but it all comes together to make a decision for the common good. So I think that what I'm getting at is I think on a local level we hear everything. On a state level, it's harder to say, but locally I think we do a good job on the whole.
Cool. Ladies, do you guys have any questions for our councilman?
Uh, Tell us something interesting about yourself.
Oh, sorry.
Maybe interesting? Nothing. I'm happy to be on the show. No, for I, you know, I'm so much more boring than I used to be, which breaks my. Somebody the other day was like, "Oh, do you ever go like?" I used to do so many more fun things, but I just work all the time now. I guess interesting things about me are one cool thing is I'm like a St. Pete history buff, so I know like everything about St. Pete history. I collect like vintage St. Pete stuff, um, old St. Pete art, old St. Pete signs, and I'm really into environmentalism too. So I go kayaking a lot. I do a lot of like cleanups at parks and stuff on the weekends. But I know that's kind of lame. I've just gotten way more boring because I like to travel, but obviously that's kind of out the window right now. But
I feel you. All right, guys. So, Nikki, do you have a question as well, or you want to move on to hot topics?
No, you know what? Honestly, it's probably kind of a rhetorical question, but looking back, like if you could go back in time, like 2 years, if you could see everything that's going on now with, with how long you've been in office, do you think you still would have wanted to be involved? Would you still have wanted to be councilman if you had known all the craziness that was going to ensue in 2020?
I feel like that's a great question, actually.
It is.
That's not a question that I would have expected. Two things I'll say on that if you talk about hindsight. First of all, if I had known what would have happened now, I would have bought a bunch of masks and I would have also been ready to buy a bunch of stock right when everything tanked.
And toilet paper.
Truthfully, I think that, yeah, I would have still want to do it. Obviously, the time restrictions. And the other funny thing is, city council is traditionally known as a lot of work, but you get to do some cool things. Like you get to go to the Grand Prix and be in a suite. You get to go to Rays games. You get a suite at the Rays games. There's no perks anymore because of everything that's happened. So the first press conference I was ever at was us canceling the Grand Prix. And the picture of me that somebody screenshot and sent to me, it's me standing behind the mayor. I'm just looking like I'm just looking super mad. And it's just, everybody was all yelling and you're getting a million texts. But I still would have done it because honestly, a community in need is when you really want to step up. And that's how you separate people who do public service for their own self-benefit or to actually help out their community. And honestly, that's why I got involved, is to help out my own community.
I saw that photo.
I didn't. Now I want to.
Just me going.
It's on Facebook. We'll find it. All right, guys. So let's move on to right into hot topics. There's a lot of things that happened the last couple of weeks, especially with the Supreme Court decision for recognizing them under the Civil Rights Act law of 1964, saying that the language in that law also protects against sexual orientation discrimination, whether you're gay or transgendered. It was a very surprising decision because this is a highly conservative Supreme Court. There has been elation from the community. I just kind of want to get a reaction from everybody. How are we feeling? I mean, I'll go last. Who wants to go first?
Like, how are we feeling about everything in general? Like,
About this certain thing, like this decision to protect transgendered and gay people under the Civil Rights Act law, because also as well the administration did urge the court to not protect them under that law. I can understand perhaps why, but now that the president has come out and said, this is a decision that they made a decision and we have to live with it. I was just trying to see how are we reacting to it.
gotcha. Just making sure it wasn't like a blanket question. I mean, obviously, I think it's awesome. I think it's late. I think it should have been done a long time ago. But right now, we need to take all the positivity we can. And I think that was one of those kind of, bright spots in a time when we've been getting nothing but bad news. And yeah.
I got you. Courtney, how are you feeling after seeing some of the images that we've seen thus far? How did you feel?
So let me be honest. I only read like the headlines. I've been busy and I haven't really been in the news lately. But like honestly, just reading the headlines, I mean, I am for human rights. Like I don't think that you should be discriminated on based on your religion, your sex, the color of your skin, I mean, literally anything. I don't think you should be judged on that. And I don't think that you should have a harder time being equal to the rest of what people consider normal society just because of those things, because you decide to be different. So I think it's a good thing.
And Councilman, how did you react when you saw the headlines and things like that?
So I had a lot of thoughts about it. First of all, interesting timing because it's Pride Month, right? So it's kind of cool in and of itself. But a lot of people are focused on the fact that Justice Gorsuch, who's conservative justice, he was Trump's first pick as a justice, is the one who wrote the opinion on why they were going to apply the Civil Rights Act of '64 to apply to gay, trans, all LGBT rights because they focused on the word sex. They said the word sex, as it was written, probably was not ever meant to pertain to these groups of people. But
Right.
and everyone said this is so cool because Gorsuch and Roberts, both two conservative justices, broke with what people expected, and they said yes, this applies to the LGBT community. The thing is, I really respect Gorsuch for what he said, and he said, look, maybe it wasn't intended to apply to LGBT people, but any reasonable person would believe that this protection does protect LGBT people in today's interpretation. And people are going, well, gee, why would this conservative guy do this? It was also, there was a lot of pushback from conservatives, but it's actually in line with what he should have done as conservative because, he's a Federalist Society guy and they're supposed to take a strict interpretation of the law, right? And the way it's written, any reasonable person would think that applies to LGBT people. So
Right.
kind of a cool intersection for me in another way because it shows that just because something is maybe pro-LGBT, it doesn't have to be also anti-Republican, and the Republicans are the ones who push this.
I found that very interesting as well because especially the time that's going on. We're asking a lot of people are asking for social equality and justice and civil rights at this time. And you know what? I was having a conversation with a friend of mine, and she said, "You know what, Sean? I had no idea that people could still do this." And to be quite honest, me neither. So I kind of find that, people coming across the aisle in order to make a human rights issue correct. I mean, this is America, so I still have a hope for it as well. Does anyone else want to add to this issue, or do you want to move on?
I want to say one more thing
Go ahead.
before, and that's there was three original plaintiffs on this who brought forward the discrimination, and two of them already passed away. So it just does go to show, though, in general, how slow the wheels of justice move and how slowly these court. I mean, even just three people brought this forward, and two of them have passed away. So it is a shame, and it is a shame that we're having interpretations on something from 1964. But again, I think it was a just outcome, and I'm pleased with it.
Same, me too. Because like I said, I think we're all Americans, and just like Courtney said, we all kind of want human rights for everyone. So moving right along, the president did make a stand on police brutality and what's been going on in the world, as we can see from different photos of the protests. We see American citizens. Not, I don't want to say taking on the police, but yeah, they're taking on, the justice system and asking for equal rights. And earlier today, the president did write a executive order, and just some of the specs on it. It, it says, well, I'll just read what I have here. It says it gives police a financial incentive to adopt better practices and encourage programs in which social workers can join police when they are answering calls that are more needed with, like, mental health issues or issues that are nonviolent. And that's one of the big takeaways I've seen from this. And another big takeaway that I saw was it also requires the attorney general to create a database tracking, certain police and law enforcement who has misconduct issues, and it's going to make it harder for them to get another job in law enforcement in different departments, because that's what kind of been happening in law enforcement. People have been brought up on misconduct issues. So this is just some specs that I took away from it, and I am, like I said, I'm happy that something is being done on the top of the level. Did everyone feel about this? I can ask Councilman Robert, Blackmon, if you want to start.
All right, so I will say that Trump's statement about basically a federal database of, so essentially what it's saying is, like, you get fired from St. Pete Police for a bunch of misconduct. That wouldn't right now carry over if you go to, say, Wyoming or something. They just wouldn't be aware of what's going on. He's trying to create a federal database for people for police misconduct and for disciplinary actions. I think that's a good thing. Trump did what Trump does. He went off topic on the statement. He started talking about the stock market. He started talking about Obama, being horrible. So stuff like that, not so much. But the thing is, A database in and of itself, a good idea. When we try and interpret things, you have to think when we interpret these things, if we're talking, again, local, or if we're talking nationwide. I do think the St. Pete Police have done a great job. I think the whole time, on the whole, we've done a great job of allowing peaceful protests. But the main thing is, in general, when you talk about police reform, what you're talking about is a decreased use of force, because when you use force, that's when things can escalate. That's when people can die. That's when a gun gets pulled. Somebody can take a gun. Somebody can take a taser, as you saw in Atlanta. And that's when lives are lost and we have real problems. We have good checks in St. Pete for use of force. Anytime somebody pulls out a weapon at all, they have to write up a report. But that's not a nationwide thing. Also, say a chokehold. Those are not banned practices nationwide. We can do more as a nation to reform our police system. And also, again, our police system isn't the only thing that needs reformation. There's also real underlying aspects of racial inequality still and racism that we have in this country, because the country is founded upon that. And just because we talk about, we'll say, I'm telling you right now that I think St. Pete Police are doing a good job. That doesn't mean that all of St. Pete's doing a good job, or that we can't improve on the whole. There's always room for improvement. We need improvement here. We need improvement everywhere. Certainly nationwide, Minneapolis has been a bad actor for a long time. Philando Castile happened in Minnesota. They have had problems for a long time. I think it's a straw that broke the camel's back, and I'm glad to see that some attention is being brought. And I appreciate certainly all the peaceful protests, but I'm glad some attention is being brought to an important issue.
All right. Nikki, how did you get any information? How did you react to him this order?
I definitely think it's a step in the right direction. I mean, like the councilman said, there's always room for improvement. And while I'm not at all of the mindset that all police are bad, and I have a problem with that. There's the brutality and the unnecessary force is obviously a problem, or it wouldn't be such a big problem, so to speak. So I think this is definitely a step in the right direction. I like the idea of, having certain police force members for certain emergencies, or, crimes. If you call an ambulance, if you call 911 because your mom fell down the stairs, you're going to get a fire truck, a police car, an ambulance. You're going to get everything, which understandable, but it's, for certain things, if we more directly train people, or specifically, like, not niche training, but train people for more specific emergencies, I really think it would go a lot further, and you'd have a lot less people, getting into situations where, there are people out there who are angry and they become cops, and it doesn't come out until years later. And I feel like some deeper training and deeper looking into the entire training process and deciding who fits best where is definitely something that needs a closer look. So
All right. And Courtney, how did you feel about what you've read, seen, and heard?
I think that Trump did a good thing with, um, like Councilman was saying, with the database for different cops, and like why they were reprimanded and stuff like that, to where they can't just move on and go to a different town and just continue like a reign of terror. I do think that there are certain people who have this mentality that they just need to prove themselves, and I think that's where a lot of the police brutality comes from. I don't think I was completely and 100% against the defund the police from the beginning. I felt like that was just, pardon my French, but I felt like it was fucking stupid. Like, that's stupid. Like, I can't even with that. I mean, looking at it, and there was something that I saw too about the guy that was tased or something. He was pulled over for a DUI, was resisting arrest, grabbed the taser, then ended up getting shot or something. Like,
Yeah, I
listen,
remember that. That happened in Atlanta, Georgia. I can't remember his name. It's like Rashard.
yeah,
but now they're making him a martyr. Like, no, he was
no,
the bad guy, and you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes. I
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I honestly, I'll be honest, that the what I saw in that video was very, can't really. I just what we were talking about, what Councilman Roberts said was use of force. I mean, I get all of this would happen, but at the same time, I was watching representative. I can't remember her name right now. She was on the View earlier. Val Cooper from I think it's her last name, from Orlando. She used to be a police detective. I think that the problem with that scenario was with a lot of people was there that wasn't was that the only option, was deadly force the only option. And the thing is, in my opinion, when they were saying defund the police, I think the word really would make people uncomfortable, because they weren't saying take the guns away, take their funding away. They were saying taking funding away from certain militaristic protocols they have. Like, let's say, like, the riot police, like, why are we shooting protesters with rubber bullets? We've seen the stories on social media, so we can't all say that's not fake. We know that. But also, I get the hostilities, but I think the bigger argument is the disproportionate use of force. And like I said, even watching that video, Courtney, I don't want to say, oh, he's a martyr or whatever, whatnot. What I'm saying is I understand the confusion, but at the same time, there is that still that thing. Like, was that the only option, was to shoot him in the back? He was running away.
Okay, but if that's the argument, then you can just say that anyone can just resist arrest and do whatever they want, and they're never going to get shot. There's not going to be any repercussions. And nobody's going to let themselves get arrested. Like, if you steal a police officer's taser and run away, I just don't like, why would you do that if you don't want someone to come after you with a weapon?
Right.
You're
At the same
arrested, you did something wrong, be arrested, quiet.
at the same time, the full story, he was drunk, and we know how people act. I get it.
Fell asleep in the
I
middle of a drive-through.
Yeah, I get it. There's a
He was
bigger
driving
argument.
drunk, potentially could kill anybody on the road. He could kill a family. What, he was in prison for 7 years for child abuse?
Oh, I didn't know that.
Me
Yeah, he
neither.
was in prison for 7 years for child abuse.
Yeah, but I think that's a slippery slope when you start talking about people's prior bad acts, because that doesn't have anything to do with the current situation. I will agree that the incident in Atlanta is not as cut and dry as what happened in Minneapolis. I mean, that was, again, you're talking about an instantaneous shooting where police officers felt threatened for their lives, as opposed to an almost 9 minutes of being on somebody's neck, half of them they were unconscious. But yeah, you don't want to have people disrespect the police. I'll say that the Atlanta situation not as clear, but in general, the point of all of this is not for, you're never going to have perfection, but for there to be less use of force incidents and less deadly use of force incidents, especially disproportionately affecting the Black community. That's the goal. But I think that use of force for all races should be minimized, and that's also, though, what people are talking about. I'm a proponent also of, I think it would be a great idea if we could come to a system where, not where the police are defunded, let's be very clear about that, but where we integrate it with, say, like they have in other countries. Let's just say that we get a call. This guy's acting crazy, somebody says. Literally crazy? Yes, we think this guy's actually crazy. You send out a mental health counselor with the police, not in place of the police, with the police, or we have police who are specifically trained to deal with mental health, because again, we are asking too much of street officers right now. It's crazy the amount of stress that's put on them, and then when stuff like this happens, good cops get a bad name. So
Right.
nobody wins. The people don't win, the police don't win, and the community doesn't win. I certainly think there is room for tweaks, but yeah, I'm not big into the whole defund the police, but I think that they can be tied in with other agencies and organizations to have a collaborative effort.
Right. Oh, like I was saying earlier with Nikki, you're right. Like that, it is a slippery slope, like he said. It's just it has to be what has to happen is people coming to the table and talking about it, because that's what they were. I think there should be like a reform. So also not only integrating the police with other departments, but also really integrating them with the community. You know what I mean? I think people, even in college, people are afraid of the police, and I talking to different people, just from my own experience, I'm just saying that's the last bit they want to call. But at the same time, they are public servants, so I think there has to be more, outreach between the two parties, because at the same time, we can't exist without the other. Because let me be clear, I don't want to abolish the police. No, because then that won't help anything. That won't solve anything, nor take their guns or whatever like that. But if we can like sit down at the table and just get some policies through, and so we don't have all these unnecessary deaths. Sorry. Anybody else want to comment before we move on? We're all good.
Mm-hmm.
We do have community policing in St. Petersburg. I'll say that.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, I missed that.
We do have a system of community policing in St. Petersburg.
Yeah. Like it's a lot better here. I can agree with that. Still I can see there's room for tweaks everywhere, but we've got a better system here, and I think it should really go forward into America. I think they can learn something from the Pinellas County Police Department. All right, so at the same time, moving on. Are we all good, guys? Yeah. All right. So also as well, our last topic for tonight, we've been highly political. I'm sorry, there's so many things going on. I just kind of want to chime on just a little bit on everything. So what's been going on with this Confederate monuments, things like that in the world. People have been around America, not only vandalizing certain statues. I've even read that George Washington, a statue of his, was vandalized, and also as well, NASCAR wanted to remove. They decided to, excuse me, decided to remove the flag from their programs and facility based on, I gotta write down names. Like it was a certain NASCAR driver out there who is African American, and he basically made a statement that this symbol is a sign for hate, and he actually made a petition to have them remove it. There's also debate that everyone, especially with these monuments being torn down. Let me just play a little video. This is 2 years ago, but this is what's kind of been going on. As you can see, this is BBC a couple of years ago, and I believe it's in South Carolina. Can't really, but there's all these people tearing this down. I don't. So, I just want to get a reaction from all of that. How are we feeling about what's going on in that regard?
You can't erase history. You may not like it, but it's history and you learn from it. I think removing the monuments and defacing statues and stuff like that, I feel like that's excessive because history has formed us into what we are today. And I mean, think about it. Like, even when you're a kid, you're learning from your parents, you're watching your parents grow. You learn from their mistakes. History teaches us that. And so if all of this stuff is out of the history books and people just stop talking about it, like, what are the future generations? They're going to be like, oh, maybe we should start buying people and making them work for us instead of, us doing our own work, because they don't know, like, you don't know about it. Like, stop erasing history, learn from history, like, respect the history. You don't always have to like every single thing that happened, because I mean, it was a different time. They're like, some of the stuff that people did in history is just messed up. I'll admit that. But I mean, you got to learn from it. Like, stop erasing it. That's where we're from. That's how, like, the world became the world.
Nikki, do you want to? How did you feel?
I mean, honestly, I pretty much agree with Courtney 100%. And also, I mean, you can't erase it. I mean, you can't erase what's already happened. You can tear down the monuments, you can deface them and throw paint all over them, but the things that happened and the reasons that they were there are still present. And even if, they're the wrong reasons, they were still put up because of a prominent a prominent time in history. And it is what shaped us. And we definitely do need to learn from our mistakes. Obviously, we're still doing that now as Americans. But I definitely, I think it's just excessive. I think we need to be better about putting up new monuments and new memorials, which I just feel like, we have so many old memorials and monuments that have been there for hundreds of years, and we've had so much history since then. I think we do need to start putting up new things and being a little bit more diligent about paying attention to the history that we're making. But I think it's excessive to be tearing everything down.
And Councilman Blackman, how did you feel?
So the video that you showed, I didn't like that video because at the end I saw a bunch of people kicking very heavy statues. And the point is, uh, to me, that was a public safety issue. So I watched for about 2 hours the other day, maybe a week or two ago, um, live feed of Birmingham, Alabama. A comedian in Alabama, something basically it goes by Funny Main. Anyway, he organized a charge to destroy a couple. Um, I think they were Confederate, but I know that he deemed them racist monuments in a park. Um, they had a pickup truck yanking like a 20-plus-foot monument down, and I was scared that somebody was going to have a drop. They said, move back, and it was chaotic. There was a ton of people. If monuments are offensive to people, I agree that they can be removed. And also, there should be a referendum process in any town where you can have a vote, a popular vote, because obviously there was enough people in Birmingham who didn't want those statues that could have been removed in an orderly way. They had the mayor come out. The mayor was shouted down at first. He's African American. He's in his 30s, and then he said, "Give me 24 hours to get the statue down." He was true to his word. He took the statue down within 24 hours. The point is, a Confederate monument. I'm not saying, and I do not think that it should be honored, but I agree with what everybody else said. You need to have them in remembrance. Now, a good example, though, of how everybody could benefit. This is just an idea I'm throwing out. We don't have any Confederate monuments in St. Petersburg. We had one. It was on Beach. Was it on Beach Drive? Was it North? Anyway, it was downtown. It was a small placard. Most people didn't know it existed. We took it out a couple of years ago. But we have a Holocaust museum downtown, and the Holocaust Museum is an impactful place where Holocaust survivors, their children, they come and speak. And again, if you try and eliminate history, what happened, all of a sudden you are doomed to repeat it. And I think it's a great thing that we still talk about, a horrible event like the Holocaust, and we're brought together in remembrance, not to celebrate the event, but to celebrate the survivors in the future. And, if there's going to be a Confederate statue somewhere, I don't want somebody, an African American person having to walk by it on their way to work and be offended every day. Because if it's offensive to people, again, there should be processes to pull these things out. But to get rid of them, destroy them is dangerous. And also, it's dangerous in the moment when they're taken down. And also, it does promote the breaking of law and order. I just think that we could, form a museum or something and have all the ticket proceeds go to some social justice cause. Again, I'm not saying we want to celebrate anything from the past, but we need to have remembrance, or else, it's like it never happened. And just because a topic of history is unpleasant doesn't mean it didn't happen.
I agree with that last part you said, because like I said, I don't think that tearing a monument down or not having the Confederate flag at a certain event or any event is going to erase history, because we know it happened. No one's talking about not talking about it in schools. There are in fact a lot of things that aren't spoken about in high schools, in public schools, like let's say that what happened to the Native Americans, like the trial of tears. I didn't learn that in my history class, yet it happened to certain people. And also as well, like I guess it's not, for me it's not a history issue, you know what I mean? It's more that it is used for, like, a hate group. And when I see it, it makes me feel uncomfortable. I'm not saying that everyone else has to feel the same way. It scares the hell out of me. That's just for me. And I don't agree with them tearing the shit down. I agree with Councilman Blackman. Rob, I agree with you in that respect. And I agree that there should be a better way to get that done. And yeah, I think it should be, I agree with that. I think it should more be in like in a in a museum like that we have in the Holocaust Museum. Because if we go to Germany, we don't see swastikas around. Because if we look at the fact, it is American history, but the Confederacy, they did leave for that time, they weren't a part of America. So they were kind of viewed by some historians as traitors. So I mean, I'm not saying that this is not a history that we shouldn't remember, but it's also, if we're talking about American heroes, I'm down for remembering certain people, but why aren't we remembering Harriet Tubman, who did something really extraordinary through the Civil War, while remembering, certain other people that have made positive contributions. Like I said, I mean, I think the issues more of the fact that this flag has been used in hate speech, just like the Nazi flag. So I think that's more the issue than anything. I believe that in years past, if it wasn't used by certain members of hate crimes and hate societies, I don't think there'd be an issue. But I think that's the bigger issue. That's most people's like issue. Does anybody want to respond to that one?
I agree, and that's truly, I think, like I said, we have a concentration camp Nazi boxcar in the middle of downtown St. Petersburg, and to see it, you have to pay money. It's not something that a Jewish person is going to be unwittingly exposed to, and that's the same I feel with Confederate monuments. Let's put it so that no descendant of slavery or any black person who could be bothered by it would have to just happen upon it. They'd have to purposely go there. And, if you could ever form a museum, I'm not saying in St. Petersburg, though, hey, we are a mecca of museums, but if you could ever form an area where you had to only be there if you made a conscious decision and you could raise money from ticket sales, yeah, it'd be great to put it towards some social justice cause or some betterment of the community. But yeah, I think here's the thing. We do need to remember what happened, but we don't want to make anybody uncomfortable. We don't want to subject people to, and I'm not saying uncomfortable in the fact that it happened. It's if people feel threatened or they feel that this represents hatred towards them, we don't want statues to represent hate towards anybody anywhere in today's society. But that has to be tempered with the fact of remembering what happened, the good and the bad, and especially the bad, so we don't repeat it.
I agree with that. And ladies, how do you guys feel?
I agree with that.
I agree as well. I think the museum idea is a fabulous one. Like even just throwing it out there, that's such a perfect solution.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I agree with that. Because like I said, I don't want anyone to forget this. Because I think the Civil War was it shows America. That's we don't agree on stuff, but and sometimes it can get like that. It shouldn't have. But like I said, I don't think that completely forgetting this shit, not teaching it, that isn't the answer. I agree with Councilman Blackman as well, because that's how we can remember that. In order, I don't, like I said, I don't agree with tearing them down, but I'm just, like I said, when I happen upon, because some of those monuments were put up for certain reasons. They were put up during the Jim Crow era just to remind people that the oppression still exists. So there is that as well. But no, I mean, I agree with you. I think that's the perfect solution. I think I got to promote this because bitches got to hear you. All right, guys. So unless anyone has anything else to say, that's the episode.
I want to mention one more thing, and that was from our last council meeting on Thursday. I don't know if anybody watched it, if they heard the news, but about all the racist comments that were made on the public comment. Again, that is, first of all, completely inexcusable. It was not people who were local. It was so heartbreaking to me that I ended up crying, which was covered in the paper. But it's just because, again, I was unaware of the fact that hatred like that still existed, not even in our community, but in our nation. And the unfortunate thing about that was you do have to temper that with, we kept taking more callers because it's free speech, and we had to hear people really had something to say on the issue. All the people, it was a coordinated effort from some website somewhere to say hateful things. And the unfortunate thing is I'd had a new business item that day. There was discussion of relocating our municipal services building from downtown to Tangerine Plaza, which is at the corner of 22nd Street and 18th Avenue South, which my plan would have called for not only putting, thousands of people every day in the heart of the African American community who would hopefully spend money at Black-owned businesses, and there'd be a creation of Black-owned businesses, but also it would have saved our city and the taxpayers over $10 million. And my thought from that is we could start a fund which would benefit entrepreneurs and improvements of that neighborhood, because every year we could do, like we have a fund we sold some land in Wiki Watch years ago. Every year we don't touch the principal, we only touch the interest, and it benefits the community. I was thinking we'd take that money, put the interest towards the community and benefit that neighborhood, give a tech incubator, give small business incubator, and we have Black-owned businesses surrounding what is city enterprise and city employees, because they'd be buying lunch, they'd be buying sodas, they'd be buying gas every day, and everybody could benefit. I was just going for a committee referral. Sadly, we had to shut the whole meeting down due to racism. And just the funny thing to me, and it's not funny, it's tragic, is that we had racist people stop what was me trying to move forward an item that was going to bring about racial equality. But screw people like that. I'm glad I live in St. Pete, and thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. Thanks
Thank
for
you so
joining. We've
much.
been talking for a while. All right, guys. So that's the episode today. Thank you guys for joining us. Again, I'm Sean Nicholas, aka Desire Some More. With me are my lovely co-host Nikki Prue. And then we also have Courtney Hobob bringing up. There you go, Bay. And once again, thank you to Councilman Blackmon. We'll see you guys next week at 10:10 on Tuesday. Have a good night.
Bye.